welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. If you asked me a month ago about my life, I'd paint you a picture of suburban bliss with my wife of nearly 2 decades, Julia. But under the glossy veneer, cracks had begun to spread, dark and deep, spurred by her sudden late nights and unexplained absences. Our home had become a stage, every smile she offered me felt rehearsed. On a particularly crisp Thursday evening, Julia, pecking at her phone, announced she'd be out late again. The clatter of her heels echoed off the marble as she rushed out, leaving behind a scent of jasmine and secrecy. Alone in the stillness of our living room, the shadows seemed to whisper, urging me to unravel the truth. Driven by a mix of dread and determination, I grabbed my keys and followed her from a safe distance. The streets bled into each other under the glow of the streetlights as I trailed her car through the maze of the city until she parked outside a familiar house, the home of my best friend, Mike. Nestled in his driveway, her car sat innocently under the amber streetlights. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white, as I watched her disappear behind his door. The betrayal was no longer a shadow, it was as glaring as the streetlights streaming through my windshield. Fueled by a bitter resolve, I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I turned my car around and drove home, the blueprint of revenge already sketching itself in my mind. They thought their secret safe, shielded by the night, but I was now the specter that haunted them. Over the next few days, I wove my web with meticulous care. I documented every clandestine meeting, gathered every scrap of evidence with the precision of a detective. My phone filled with photos and videos, timestamps aligning perfectly with the lies Julia told about working late or girls' nights out. The climax of my plan took place at the annual gala hosted by my company, where the city's elite gathered under the guise of charity, but often for the sport of gossip. Julia, resplendent in a gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, clung to my arm, unaware of the storm I was about to unleash. As the evening waned, I tapped my glass, calling for silence. The room settled, 100 pairs of eyes turning toward me. Julia squeezed my hand, smiling up at me with practiced affection. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady, commanding. "Tonight, while we gather here, there are truths among us that beg to be shared." I paused, feeling the weight of the room's anticipation. Pulling out my phone, I connected it to the projector. "Let's unveil some realities, shall we?" The first image flashed on the screen, Julia and Mike, unmistakably close, captured in a clandestine embrace. The gasps were audible, the shock palpable. Julia's face drained of color as she stared at the undeniable proof of her infidelity displayed for all to see. Beside her, business associates, friends, and socialites witnessed the scandal unfold. "I hope you enjoy the show," I whispered to her, as I stepped away, leaving her amidst the chaos I had orchestrated. My revenge was not loud or violent, it was cold, calculated, and utterly public. As I exited the venue, the cool night air felt like a balm. The chapter of my life that included Julia and Mike had ended on that stage, and though the road ahead was uncertain, I walked it alone, unburdened and resolute. The game of shadows was over, and I had emerged into the light. The morning after the gala, the sun breaks over the horizon with indifference. I sit at the kitchen table, the echo of last night's revelation mingling with the chirp of the morning birds, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside. The phone lies next to my coffee mug, buzzing relentlessly with calls and messages, but I ignore them. Among the noise, a knock at the door jolts me from my thoughts. Reluctantly, I rise and open it, finding my sister, Leah, on the doorstep. Her expression is a mix of concern and fury. "Evan, what have you done?" Leah brushes past me into the house, her presence filling the space with anxious energy. I close the door and face her. "I did what was necessary, Leah." She turns to me, her hands on her hips. "By humiliating Julia in front of the whole city. Was that necessary?" Sitting down, I motion for her to join me. She betrayed me, Leah. And with Mike, of all people. It wasn't just a moment of weakness, it's been going on for months. Leah's face softens as she sits across from me. I'm not saying she didn't deserve to face consequences, Evan. But you've stirred up a storm. There's talk all over town, and it's not just about Julia. You're in the spotlight now too. I nod, acknowledging the mess. I know. But it's not over yet. This was just the beginning. My resolve hardens as I think about my next moves. Leah's eyes narrow, curious. What do you mean? Before I can reply, another knock interrupts us. Cautiously, I open the door to find an unexpected figure, Angela, Mike's wife. Her usually composed features are marred by distress, her eyes red-rimmed. Evan, can we talk? Angela's voice is shaky but determined. I usher her in, exchanging a glance with Leah, who looks as surprised as I feel. Angela takes a seat, wringing her hands. I saw everything last night. The pictures, the texts, her voice breaks, but she composes herself with a deep breath. I don't know what to do. Leah, ever the peacemaker, reaches out to touch Angela's arm. We'll figure this out together, she says, her tone soothing. Angela nods gratefully and then turns to me. What are you planning, Evan? Revenge? I lean back, considering how much to reveal. Mike betrayed me as much as Julia did you. This isn't just about revenge. It's about justice, too. And what about Julia? What if she retaliates? Leah asks, voicing a concern I hadn't fully considered. Angela interjects, we should be cautious. But I'm with you, Evan. Mike needs to be held accountable. I look between the two women, allies formed from the ashes of betrayal. Then we need to be strategic. Mike is not going to sit quietly, and neither will Julia. We need to be 2 steps ahead of them. Leah nods, her mind already turning. We start by securing our assets and reputations. I have contacts who can help. Angela adds, and I'll gather more evidence. There's more to be uncovered, I'm sure of it. As they discuss logistics, I feel a sense of grim satisfaction mixed with unease. The path forward is fraught with risk, but with Leah and Angela by my side, the burden feels lighter. Together, we begin to craft a plan, not just for revenge, but for rebuilding the lives that Julia and Mike shattered. The fight is far from over, and the alliance forged today will either lead us to redemption or deeper into the vortex of scandal. The next week unfurls with the meticulous precision of a chess game. Leah, Angela, and I spend hours holed up in my study, poring over documents and digital trails. Angela proves an unexpected asset, her calm efficiency cutting through the chaos of financial statements and secret communications she's unearthed from Mike's home office. One afternoon, as a storm brews outside, casting dark shadows across the room, Angela slaps a stack of bank statements on the desk. Look at this, she points to a series of large, unexplained transactions. Mike's been funneling money into an offshore account for months. Leah leans over the papers, her brow furrowed. That's not just betrayal, it's fraud. We can use this. I nod, feeling the weight of the evidence in our hands. We need to be careful how we play this card. If we go public too soon, they'll have time to cover their tracks. The room grows silent, save for the tap of rain against the window, as we consider our next move. Suddenly, my phone buzzes with an incoming call. The screen flashes Julia's name, and my pulse quickens. I put the call on speaker. Evan, Julia's voice is icy, controlled. We need to talk. Leah and Angela exchange a glance, signaling me to proceed. I'm listening, I say, my tone neutral. There's no need for us to destroy each other. Why don't you just stop this crusade? You've made your point, Julia suggests, a hint of desperation underlying her composure. Leah mouths a word to me, negotiate. Maybe. But first, you'll need to convince me why I should, I respond, playing along. Julia sighs, the sound crackling over the speaker. Meet me at the old cafe on 5th, tomorrow at noon. Alone. I agree, though we all know I won't be going without a plan. The next day, under a bleak, gray sky, I arrive at the cafe, a discreet earpiece connecting me to Leah and Angela, who are parked nearby, listening to every word. Julia is already there, seated at a corner table, her posture tense. As I sit, she wastes no time. Evan, let's end this madness. We both stand to lose everything. I'll sign whatever you want, divorce papers, settlements, just stop digging into Mike and me. Her plea betrays her fear, but I remain impassive. It's not just about what I stand to lose anymore, Julia. It's about what's right. You and Mike did more than just cheat. Julia's eyes flicker with fear, her hands clutching her coffee cup tightly. What are you talking about? I lean in, lowering my voice. Money laundering, Julia. And I'm not the only one who knows. The evidence is already with the right people. This isn't just a domestic issue anymore. Her face pales, her facade cracking. Evan, please. I stand, signaling the end of the meeting. I'll see you in court, Julia. As I walk out, my phone vibrates with a message from Leah, well done. We're on track. The pieces are moving into place, each play bringing us closer to a checkmate. My heart races not just with the adrenaline of confrontation, but with the nearness of justice, for both Angela and myself. As I step out into the cold drizzle, I realize that the game is far from over, but today, we've tightened the net around Julia and Mike, one strategic move at a time. The courthouse looms large against the overcast sky, its stone facade echoing the gravity of the day. Inside, the atmosphere crackles with tension as whispers flutter through the gallery. Today is the culmination of weeks of strategy and betrayal, a final confrontation in the legal arena. Leah, Angela, and I take our seats, a united front. Across the aisle, Julia and Mike sit together, their expressions strained under the weight of impending judgment. As the judge enters, a hush falls over the courtroom. Court is now in session, the bailiff announces, and the proceedings begin. The evidence unfolds like a dramatic play, the illicit transactions, the secret communications, all meticulously documented and presented by our attorney. Julia and Mike's defense falters under the weight of undeniable proof, their lawyers' arguments sounding increasingly desperate. During a recess, Leah leans over to me. We've got them, Evan. They can't wiggle out of this. I nod, though a nagging feeling tugs at my gut. It's not over until it's over, I reply, watching as Julia whispers something urgent to Mike. As the trial resumes, there's a sudden commotion at the back of the room. A man bursts through the doors, breathless. Wait, he shouts, holding up a manila envelope. There's more evidence. The judge frowns, demanding order, as the bailiff takes the envelope and delivers it to the bench. The courtroom murmurs with curiosity and confusion as the judge examines the contents, his expression unreadable. Given the contents of this envelope, I am calling for a brief adjournment, the judge declares, rising from his seat. The room erupts in whispers as he leaves, the envelope's contents still a mystery to those of us in the gallery. Julia turns to look at me, her eyes wide with fear and something else, guilt. But it's not just her look that unsettles me, it's the man who delivered the envelope. His gaze meets mine, and there's a flicker of recognition. When the judge returns, he calls the court to order. We have new evidence that claims another dimension to this case, he announces, holding up documents for the room to see. These are not just transactions and communications. They include threats made against Mrs. Julia Larson, by an anonymous source, threatening her if she did not comply with certain financial demands. The courtroom gasps, and I feel Leah's grip tighten on my arm. I stare at Julia, the pieces clicking into place, a manipulated game far beyond simple betrayal. Julia stands, her voice trembling as she addresses the court. I admit to my part in the financial misconduct, but I was coerced under threat. These threats began shortly after I ended an affair. I was too afraid to come forward. The room is silent, processing her confession and its implications. Mike looks at her, betrayal written across his face, now understanding the depth of the manipulation. The judge nods solemnly. Given these revelations, we will need to reassess the evidence and motives in this case. Bail is granted until a full investigation is conducted. As the crowd disperses, Julia approaches me, her posture that of a defeated adversary. Evan, I should have told you about the threats. But I was scared. I look at her, the anger softening as I begin to understand the complexity of her situation. Why didn't you trust me? She shakes her head, tears in her eyes. I thought I could handle it on my own. I was wrong. Outside the courthouse, Angela, Leah, and I gather, the weight of the day's revelations hanging heavy. Leah sighs. So, what now? I look back at the courthouse, considering the twisted path that led us here. Now, we help the investigation. And we rebuild, not just our lives, but a better, truer understanding of what happened. As we walk away, the truth, with all its painful complexity, settles around us, promising not just closure but a new beginning. In the game of deceit, the final move was not one of revenge, but of unexpected redemption and a deeper understanding of trust and forgiveness.